Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtai Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachavane Nivasesha Sunnivari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Sari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare. Okay, what I'll do is I can read myself these last paragraphs in this purple. Then if you want to read, you can just put your hand up, and as usual, you can read.
Chari is joining from India.
Okay, that's probably why she got.
Hare Krishna, Mother.
Hare Krishna, Mother.
Nice to hear your voice, Ajari Mataji. Very well.
India. Thank you for joining us. Surprise guest. Hare Krishna. Hope everything's
Good one, surprise guest.
Hare Krishna. Okay, what I'll do is let me read these paragraphs, and then I think Mother Radhakishore has a hand up, followed by Kunamai. Okay. On such occasions, Krishna obeys the Pandavas' orders without question. Thus, Krishna is called Ukti Tantra, subordinate to the words of his pure devotees. In a broader sense also, all of Krishna's dealings with the Pandavas display his eagerness to submit himself to their control. He readily agrees to whatever they wish him to do. This implies the other ways Hanuman had mentioned to Narada that Krishna helps the Pandavas. He's standing guard for them at night and so on. Ukti Tantra is also a polite synonym for the word sevaka, servant, which Narada may have considered an unsuitable, discourteous word for describing Lord Krishna. Okay. All these relationships between Krishna and the Pandavas are pervaded by intimate affection. For the Pandavas, Krishna is the eternal object of worship, but more than that, he is their eternal friend. Arjuna and his brothers also worship demigods like Lord Shiva and spiritual masters like Drona. But the Pandavas' worship of Krishna is unique because it comes forth from unalloyed prema. Okay, it's very nice. So we're just being reminded to pick it up the context. As this is how Hanuman was glorifying the Pandavas. Yeah. Whereas Hanuman has a bit of a reserve, as though he has great prema and affection for the Lord. As far as Lord Ram serving him, that's out of the question for Hanuman. So that's why he's very much impressed and excited and awed when he hears about the Pandavas, because the Lord himself is engaged, as we've heard, as their watchman, as their friend, as their servant, sevaka. Utti Tantra also could be known as sevaka, servant. So this is the cause of Hanuman's great ecstasy. So since then, Narada Muni has now gone to the place of the Pandavas. And remember, we just remembering as well, there was that nice exchange between, I think it was Narada Muni and Yudhisthira, where Yudhisthira Maharaj brought out all the items for reception of Narada. And Narada in his ecstasies had wrestled those items of reception and worship from Yudhisthira and began to worship Yudhisthira instead. So they had that loving exchange. All right, so this is a context. So we'll pick it up from Mother Radhakishore, can pick it up from text 8.
Text 8. For Brahma, Rudra, and other demigods, he is difficult to realize even in advanced meditation. He can be known through the words of the Vedas only when one understands their special purport. Sriman Nrsimha, Sri Vaman, and Sri Raghavendra are his planetary expansions. Commentary. The supremely charming, transcendental person, Sri Krishna, is difficult to understand. Great demigods may know his supremacy theoretically, but they cannot begin to taste Krishna Prem. All Vedic texts are ultimately descriptions of Sri Krishna, yet His all-attractive charm is not obvious in the literal meaning of the Vedic mantras, nor in the ritualistic explanations. One may discover the secret purport of the Vedas, which is possible only by the mercy of Sri Krishna's pure devotee. Jnanis follow the process of atan nirasan, negating all essential concepts to find the Supreme gradually in his impersonal feature. But to obtain a more confidential understanding of the personality of Godhead, this neti-neti method is inadequate. Vaishnavas adore the Supreme Brahman in various aspects of his personality. They worship him at different times as the avatars, Nrsimha, Vamana, Ramachandra, and so on. Each Vaishnava has his own favorite form of the Lord, his Ishtadev. Even though Lord Nrsimha is frightening and prone to anger, he has many devotees who constantly remembered how he cared for Prahlad. And protected him from all dangers. Lord Vaman is also popular even though a dwarf. His devotees remember how he covered the universe with 3 steps and displayed his universal form to Bali. Countless devotees for millions of years have revered Lord Ramachandra, remembering his example as a perfect monarch. But the attraction for each of these avatars is but a reflection of Sri Krishna's supreme attractiveness. All the avatars of Godhead finally are his partial expansions. Each of them is the absolutely potent supreme person, but none of them exhibits all the aspects of his potency. Only Sri Krishna manifests completely the glories of God. By the word kila, indeed, Narad indicates that Krishna's primacy among the forms of Godhead is a well-known fact established by scripture. The particular Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28 declares Ete cham sakalah purusham Krishna Bhagavan Swayam. These avatars are all part and parts of the parts of the Supreme Person, but Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Krishna is superior to Lord Nrsimha, Lord Vamana, and Lord Raghavendra, and therefore the Pandavas are superior to Sri Prahlad, Bali, and Hanuman.
Okay, let's just pause there, Sherry. If there's any questions, observation, comments, or thoughts on that.
I just remembered you was winding your friend up with this
Krishna
slok.
to Bhagavan Swayam, yeah. Ete
Krishna to-
Kamsakalabhamsa, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Yeah. And the idea there is that Krishna is the embodiment of complete rasa in the full sense of the term. Although his expansions as Vishnu and other forms are also non-different from him, from the form of tattva, but from the form of rasa. As Rupa Goswami guides us in the nectar of devotion, that is actually the platform of Uttam Bhakti. That's the highest worship. And so, yeah, so in that sense, that's why now the Pandavas are, because they worship Krishna, because they adore Krishna in great love and affection, that's why it is superior to Prahlad, Bali, and Hanuman. Anyone can see that connection there. Prahlad, he worships Lord Nrsimhadev. He doesn't worship Krishna. And Bali Maharaj as well, Vamanadev, and Hanuman is Lord Ram. He obviously, Hanuman worships Lord Ram. But the Pandavas are directly connected to Krishna. Although they don't experience the rasas that the residents of Vrindavan experience. And that's why this this Brihat Bhagavatamrita is absolutely fascinating, because it's going to take us gradually, as we mentioned last week, step by step. It's going to broaden out the loving affection, because yeah, because the Pandavas have a set. I mean, they have prema, but what's you could say? Could I use the word? Actually, it's used sometimes. It's used that there's a word, because they worship Krishna in what's the mood? They worship Krishna.
Servant,
Yeah, or in reverence is the mood.
or reverence, yeah.
Is the word. So sometimes from the followers of Rupa described, I remember my Guru Maharaj in one of his books described that it's actually crippling. It actually cripples the real, it's crippling this sense of awe and reverence in comparison to the residents of Raj. Now, if that comparison wasn't there, just say, for argument's sake, there was no Goloka Vrindavan, there was no residence of Raj. You know, this would be the highest level of worship of the Pandavas. Yeah, because they're because they're actually exchanging with Krishna in a kind of intimate way, but with a sense of awe and reverence. But it gets, as we all know, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, we know now about the highest essence of relationship with Krishna, which is quite, you could say, a little bit inconceivable for us to fully appreciate. Anyway, Krishna's very sweet, and his attractness to that. Any other thoughts on that?
Arjun was a friend. Arjun was also a friend, wasn't he?
Yeah, Arjuna was I think that might be brought up here as we go. Let's see, because amongst the Pandavas, Arjuna was the most dear to Krishna. And we know in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna exhibits his universal form, Arjuna gets quite worried that the way he was treating Krishna, sometimes joking with him, because Arjuna came from a higher clan externally than Krishna. So sometimes Arjuna would mock Krishna. They would lay on the bed together, etc. So there's so Arjuna, although interesting relationship he had with Krishna, he was quite intimate with Krishna in his friendly dealings, but still he had the idea of Krishna's greatness. Hare Krishna.
Okay, text 9.
Yeah, carry on, Mother. Thank you.
All other incarnations of Godhead expand from mere portions of his plenary portions. Great gods like Brahma are considered his material opulence, and material nature is his maidservant, standing always in view, ready to serve him. She annexed the creation, protection, and destruction of the universe. Commentary: incarnations like Matsya and Kurma manifest Krishna's potency less than fully. Those with Prithu Maharaj are jivas empowered by small sparks of his splendor, and Brahma and other demigods are material reflections of Krishna's creative powers. Authorities on the Vedic literature, Vedic scriptures generally do not label as pastime incarnations the demigods and other material vibhutis of Krishna. The reasoning is that the Lord's pastime of creating the material universe is not on the same transcendental level as his personal pleasure pastimes, in which he reciprocates with loving devotees like Prahlad and Hanuman. Brahma explains this to Narad in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 2:643 to 46. Whether in the form or formless, any being in the material world exceptionally possessed of strength, power, beauty, riches, breeding, modesty, forgiveness, or mental and perceptual dexterity may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually it is not so. This applies to me, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and great generators of living beings like Daksha and Prajapati. It applies to you, Narad and Kumaras, and to heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra. It applies to the leaders of the Bhuvar Lok planets, the earthly planets and lower planets, and the Gandharva, Vidyadhar, and Charan planets. It applies to the leaders of the Yaksha, Raksha, and Urgas. And it applies to the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists, and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, Jinn, Kusumandas, great aquatics, great beasts, and great birds. There are only fragments of the transcendental potency of the Lord. O Narad, now I shall state one after another the transcendental incarnations of the Lord known as Lila Avatar. Hearing of their activities counteracts their all foul matters accumulated in the air. These pastimes are pleasing to hear and are to be relished. Therefore, they are in my heart. Commenting on these verses of the second canto, Srila Sridhar Swami explains that many opulent expansions of the Supreme Person exist in this world, and each of them displays part of the Supreme Lord's potency. Some display great mahas, physical strength. Others display ojas, sensory strength. And yet others display sahas, mental power, bala, steadfastness, shri, beauty, hri, avoidance of karmic entanglement, vibhuti, wealth, atma, intelligence, or adhupuddharana, amazing effulgence. Brahma mentions the Gunavatars, himself, Vishnu, and Shiva, among the material opulences of the Supreme Person, in the same way that Krishna does in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But starting with the verse beginning, Paradhanyo Yana, Brahma separately describes the transcendental pastime incarnations of the Lord Brahma, enumerates only the most prominent of these Lila avatars, because there are many lesser known pastime avatars of Vishnu, more than could ever be listed. As Sri Sut Goswami states, hold on, I have to put the battery on.
No problem. Abhati hasyankhe harikatva nidadujya yatha vilashna kulya sahasrashaha. Okay, continue.
Can I start again?
Yeah, just
O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets flowing from the inexhaustible sources of water. Bhagavatam 1.3.26. Sri Krishna is Sattva Nidhi, the original source of all Sattva, which Srila Sanatana Goswami defines here as compassion. The Lord expresses this compassion by descending to the material world in numerous forms, which are all secondary rivulets flowing from him, their inexhaustible source. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are incarnations of the personality of Godhead for ruling the modes of nature. The three lords are not mere material opulences, but because Brahma and Shiva take the roles of devotees and work as preachers of Krishna consciousness, they are therefore counted among Krishna's vibhuti. Lord Vishnu appears from time to time as a companion of Brahma and Shiva, and therefore he is also sometimes described as the material vibhuti of the Supreme. For example, Lord Vishnu incarnates in each Manvantar in his form of Yagna and so on. Strictly speaking, Yagna and other Manvantar avatars are pastime incarnations, but they are also considered vibhutis because they collaborate with Brahma and Vishnu. Brahma and Shiva to uphold the reigns of the various Manus, and because they sometimes accept the post of Indra. All the incarnations and vibhutis of the Supreme Lord have their source in Sri Krishna. Maya, the controller of material existence, cannot have an intimate, loving relationship with him, but must constantly attend him as a maid servant. She appears prior to the Guna avatar, and she is the creator, maintainer, and the destroyer of the universe. Thus, Brahma and Shiva, being subordinates to her, are humbly situated as servants of the servant of the personality of Godhead.
Okay, we better pause there and see if we understood what was, that was quite a lengthy purport, going into quite some tattva of the different incarnations of the Lord. I was just thinking that this is Sanatana Goswami, and it was Lord Chaitanya spoke to Sanatana Goswami for, I don't know for how long, the most time, I think.
2 months.
2 months, yeah. And specifically there, if you read in Sanatana Shiksha, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's there where you hear about all the different incarnations of the Lord, all the different avatars of the Lord. Again, it comes from Bhagavatam, but there, Lord Chaitanya spent some time explaining to Sanatana Goswami all the different aspects of the incarnations of the Lord. So he's sharing that here as well. Obviously, he's expanded upon it very much in this Brihat Bhagavatamrita. But any questions about this?
Well, Vishnu, I mean, the last 2 paragraphs of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva incarnations, and sometimes it's one just vibhuti, and sometimes he's original.
Yeah.
And then Manvantars.
Yeah, this is the type of purport where you need to sit down with a pen and paper and kind of write things down and try and follow it, try and follow the flow of logic. But let's just take it here. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are, they're also they are incarnations, including the modes, as we know. But interesting here, it mentioned about that they are preachers. How is Brahma a preacher? Anyone could give us some help with that? In what way is Brahma a preacher?
Because I felt, can I say something, Prabhu?
What?
Narada Muni, whenever there's a question, he goes to Brahma.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's valid. Yeah, he goes to Brahma.
We have Brahma Samhita.
We have Brahma Samhita. Yeah, very good. Brahma Samhita. And also, I was thinking from a more, or you could say a more objective point, that Lord Brahma, that one of the reasons that he creates the material world in a way that he does is to facilitate the jivas actually desiring to go back to Godhead. So he has that thankless task of creating to facilitate the wayward desires of conditioned souls. But the idea is made in such a way that they're going to, after many births and deaths, if they meet a devotee. So you could say that's preaching, that's his preaching to create the material world. But Shiva, yeah, definitely, he's always preaching the glories of the Lord, isn't it? He's always speaking about the glories of the Lord.
Yeah, he's speaking to Parvati Devi,
Parvati.
and he's practicing, always chanting, glorifying.
Yeah, always glorifying the Lord.
Yeah.
And yeah.
He says the first Ramayana, doesn't he?
He does, yeah, I don't know, okay, yeah. He's the one who first speaks Ramayana. Is that correct? Yeah, Lucia, I've never heard that, but I take your word for it. Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I can't remember that.
Anyway.
I remember I read about 5-6 years ago, so it's not fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
But that's how the original Valmiki Ramayana begins.
Yeah.
So.
And this verse, it was exclusively quoted, this verse here from the Srimad Bhagavatam. describes the actual manifest vibhutis of the Lord. Actually, everything that has anything of any worth is actually a representation of the potency of the Lord. So that's what this verse is about here. Even interesting.
Prabhu, can I say something?
Yeah,
Which I was thinking.
yeah, interesting. Just the great demigods, the great atheists, the spacemen. I don't know who the spacemen are, apart from Narada Muni. Who's the spacemen? The great spacemen.
It could be, we were before reading before that there are some kind of people, they can go to Vaikuntha or Golok, but they can also come back.
All right, so these are,
What we call like angels.
yeah,
I think that's how you explain that maybe they look like angels or.
in other words, those who can travel, who have interplanetary travel. Okay. As well as to the dead bodies, evil spirits. Now, I kind of, let me just go back and see why, the context of that verse. Authorities of the Vedic scriptures generally do not label as pastime incarnations the demigods and other material vibhutis of Krishna. Their reasoning is that the Lord's pastimes of creating two universe is not on the same transcendental level as his personal pleasure pastimes, in which he reciprocates with loving devotees like Prahlad and Hanuman. Brahma explains this to Narad in the second canto. Then he quotes this verse. So, okay, yeah. So this is the essence of this verse here. Everything that's been mentioned is only fragments of the transcendental potency of the Lord. Even here, dead bodies, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, satans, jinn, kusmandas. You know what genies are? They're jinns. That's supposed to be persons. I think that's known in India, isn't it? Jinns are kind of a type of ghostly type, disembodied people who kind of haunt people, as far as I know. As far as I know, in India, tradition is that children, they wear these talismans, these black belts on their waist, isn't it? Some of you might know. Yeah, especially newborn babies, which are quite impressionable. So they don't get the evil eye from ghostly persons. They're protected with these black belts with talismans and mantras chanted on them. So that's jinns and kusma. Anyway, all these have a certain amount of potency, but that's all coming from Krishna. Of course, everything comes from Krishna, but they could even any level of potency. Any rulers in this world, whether it be Mr. Putin, good or worse, or anyone who has any grandeur, any wealth, anything in this world, it's just indicating the Lord's greatness. So, yeah. Yeah, I thought we had to stop there and comment a little bit on this because it's quite an extensive purport. Any other questions on it? Sorry, Nemo Mata, I cut you off. You was asking a question.
No, I was just thinking,
Comment.
speaking about Narasimha Dev. So even Nectar of Devotion says, it is, I think there's a quote from Narasimha Purana, says, anyone who prays unto me and then seek shelter, I think, and I protect him always with all sorts of calamities. So I was thinking about it because we're talking about all avatars.
Okay, so you're bringing up that as to you just explain some of the qualities or some of the benedictions that is there from worshiping Lord Nrsimhadev. Is that why you mentioned that?
Yes, Babu.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, he protects from harm, even physical harm.
Yeah, because it mentioned in Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah, we have the also the Nrsimha Kavacha as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And doesn't Lord Ram also say the same thing? If one surrenders to me, I protect them.
Sorry, say that again. I missed the first part.
Lord Ramachandra also says the same thing. If one comes to him, that if they surrender to him, he protects them.
Yeah, that's Vibhushan, isn't it? That's in regards to Vibhushan, Ravan's brother, when he comes to take shelter, when he leaves the camp of Ravan. And he's greeted with lots of suspicion.
Yeah, he does actually.
But then Ram speaks up and he speaks this verse. He's actually, anyone who surrenders unto him, he doesn't care what is the background, but Lord Ram's going to give him, as far as I know, that's the context of that, it's give him protection.
Vibhishan, yeah.
So, yeah. All right. We're probably going to hear more. We're going to hear more about the different incarnations. And so let's, Mother Kunamai, you'd like to read from text 10. I think that's where we left off.
In text 10, when Brahma and other demigods responded to the lamenting Mother Earth, together they stood on the shore of the milk ocean, observing strict vows. They recited prayers and worshipped the Supreme Lord, meditating with full concentration. Nonetheless, they were unable to obtain his favor. Commentary. At the end of Dwapar Yuga, when armies of godless kings burdened the earth, the rulers of the universe found out for themselves that the Supreme Person cannot be easily seen by focusing the heart's attention in yogic samadhi. To relieve Mother Earth of her distress, the demigods accepted severe vows and restricting their eating and even their breathing to sharpen their mental concentration. They then approached the shore of the ocean of milk, which surrounds the island on which Lord Kshirodakshay Vishnu resides. They recited the Purusha Sukta and other Vedic prayers for his pleasure and tried to fix their external and internal senses on him. But after all this, they obtained no sign of his satisfaction, not a single word or gesture to reassure them. From this experience, recorded in the 10th canto, first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the demigods learned that the mechanical meditation is not an effective means for achieving personal association with the Supreme Lord.
Okay, so a little comment here. This is first time we're hearing a bit more detail now, because we noticed that the demigods, they approached the Svetadweep. There's a spiritual planet within each universe where the Lord resides. So, but here we're hearing that they prepared themselves before by doing severe vows. So restricting their eating and doing yogic pranayam so they could be in correct state of mind. So they went through a lot. And they recited the Purusha Sukta prayers, but not a single word came from the Lord. I think eventually the Lord speaks within the heart of Lord Brahma, isn't it? Is that correct? That's what we know.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So how long they was there? It could have been thousands of years. We don't know.
No, it doesn't say that, because I think isn't that the first chapter of Krishna book?
Yeah, this is what we're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we're hearing a little bit more details here. Purusha Sukta, we know that they recited the Purusha is generally what they will recite.
Because then Kshirodakshay Vishnu communicates with Brahma telepathically.
Yeah.
There are no words or anything. It's just
Yeah.
Mentally they speak to each other.
Within the sky of his heart, then Lord Brahma received the communication. So then he revealed that. So, yeah, and I think this is the highlight here, is that here the demigods learn that a mechanical meditation is not effective means for achieving personal association of the Lord. Yeah. What is it? It's bhakti, isn't it? That we understand. That's what attracts the attention of the Lord. No doubt the demigods had some level of devotion, I'm sure, because they are devotees of the Lord. But their mechanical means of receiving communion from the Lord didn't really impress him much. So he did communicate to Brahma. We have to say that. All right. You can continue reading. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here we go. Brahma then received in his heart. Yeah, carry on with it.
Brahma then perceived in his heart the Lord's command, which he heard as an embodied voice in the sky. He repeated that command to the demigods, and they all became satisfied. Commentary. Because sincere worship of the personality of Godhead never goes in vain, the demigods did receive their answer. But because their worship was formal and reverential, the Lord chose not to answer them in person. He wanted to remind them that the official worship alone does not satisfy him. Brahma received the Lord's order, but only in the core of his heart, and after he had carefully withdrawn all the external functions of his senses and mind. Furthermore, he was able to hear the order only as a voice in the sky from an unseen speaker. When Brahma heard in his meditation and repeated to the demigods is now famous, Lord Brahma said, before we submitted our petition to the Lord, he was already aware of the distress on earth. Consequently, for as long as the Lord moves on the earth to diminish its burden by his own potency in the form of time, all of you demigods should appear through plenary portions as sons and grandsons in the family of Yadus. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has full potency, will personally appear as son of Vasudev. Therefore, all the wives of the demigods should also appear in order to satisfy him. The foremost manifestation of Krishna is Sankarsan, who is known as Ananta. He is the origin of all incarnations within this material world. Previous to the appearance of Lord Krishna, this original Sankarsan will appear as Baladev, just to please the Supreme Lord in his transcendental pastimes. The potency of the Lord known as Vishnumaya, who is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will also appear with Lord Krishna. This potency, acting in different capacities, captivates all the worlds, both material and spiritual. At a request of her master, she will appear with her different potencies in order to execute the work of the Lord. Bhagavatam 10:122 to 25.
Okay, it's just so this is from the Bhagavatam directly. Anyone pick up this here? It sounds like Brahma. It said he received in his heart the Lord's command. And then it says, which he heard as an unembodied voice in the sky. So it came, an unembodied voice was heard, but it came into his heart. And it sounds contradictory. Was it one or the other? But here it's saying, received in his heart the Lord's command. He heard an unembodied voice. And then he repeated it to the demigods, who became very satisfied. Any questions about this, Craig?
If he heard the voice, then hopefully the demigods would also heard the voice.
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yogamaya has got a way for them communicating and hearing just between themselves.
That's the Lord's mystic potency. Like, for instance, when that account in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the opulence and sweetness of the Lord in the Madhya Lila, when that story is told of Lord Brahma, who came to take darshan of the Lord. There's millions of Lord Brahmas, but none of them could see each other. None of them could see each other, except only the four-headed Brahma could see everyone for his education in humility, but they couldn't see each other. And then sometimes we hear Krishna's flute playing, isn't it? Krishna communicates with certain gopis and not with others. So yeah, that's Krishna's mystic potency. There's a lot of instances like, also the Ras Leela itself. Each gopi thinks Krishna is only with her, but he's with all the millions.
That's right. Yeah, all the millions.
Yeah.
But Murli Prabhu, in this one, he says he repeated that command to the demigods, and they all became satisfied.
Yeah. So he's just telling he's just telling them what he heard. Yeah. So it seems like he was the most qualified to actually get that revelation from the Lord. You know?
That's right. And I think then, as I said, demigod were satisfied, but they were happy with whatever.
Yeah. I was thinking here as well, it says he wanted to remind them that official worship alone does not satisfy him. So the Lord is very much interested in spontaneous, because it has to be officially done, as we know. So he's really interested in that which is so spontaneous, in the sense that you're not doing it because it has to be done. You're doing it out of spontaneous affection and love. So very important point.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, can I ask
Yes.
something?
Yeah.
Prabhu, you heard it sounds like contradictory. Why do you say like that, Prabhu?
Well, he said two things. Perhaps it just might. I'm just
No, yeah, because
it
down
says he received it in his heart. So it came from the heart. Then it says he heard a voice.
But and after we drawn all the Prabhu, it speaks down the last sentence.
It says
it explains.
he heard it.
Okay.
But then when his heart was clear.
And carefully withdrawn all the intent functions.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. It's just my misunderstanding of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's clear. Great. All right. So let's go on. Can you continue reading? I think so. Text 12.
Text 12. Only in some confidential meetings did wise sages like Garga divulge who Krishna really is. He whom the personality of Godhead Narayan only partly equals, no one else even coming close. Text 13. Thus we hear Shri Krishna's presence in Mathura city as the deity called Dirga Vishnu, Mahahari, Mahavishnu, and Mahanarayan. Commentary. We should not surmise that when Krishna appears in response to the request of the demigods, he did so only as another avatar of Sri Narayan. Krishna is the original Godhead, superior to Narayan, and Krishna's devotees, like the Pandavas, are superior to Narayan's devotees, including Garud and Lord's other attendants in Vaikuntha. Narad mentions that Garga Muni revealed Krishna's identity in some confidential meetings. Narad prefers not to mention that these meetings had been with Nanda Maharaj. Nanda's position as a recipient of Krishna's mercy is so advanced that his name should not be mentioned until later, when the discussion reaches a higher level. Garga Muni only tactfully alluded to Krishna's supremacy. He said that Krishna and the Supreme Lord Narayan are equal in some ways. These words imply that although Narayan is like Krishna, in the sense of also being the source of all incarnations and having a divine body, the Lord of Vaikuntha is not equal to Krishna in all respects. Garga refers to Lord Narayan as Bhagwan, and according to Pasara Rishi definition, Bhagavatam refers to that person who fully possesses all authority, strength, fame, opulence, knowledge, and renunciation. Narayan means the personality of Godhead who casts his merciful glance, ayate, on the multitude of living beings, Nara. By this glance, he bestows the potencies of knowledge and action, thus engaging the jivas in useful and sanctifying activities. Only Narayan equals Krishna in some respects. The secondary expansions of Godhead do not even begin to equal Krishna. The creative Purusha form of Vishnu is glorified as the source of all avatars. This Purusha is the source of an destructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. Bhagavatam 135. But in spite of belonging to the exclusive category of avatari, source of incarnations, the Purusha Vishnu does not display all attractive supremacy, sweet pleasure pastimes like Sri Krishna. Only Narayan in Vaikuntha exhibits personal pastimes somewhat resembling Krishna's, but these leelas of Vaikuntha cannot match the charm and intimacy of Krishna's sport in Golok Vrindavan. As we read in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, 10:8-19, Garga Muni specifically told Nand Maharaj, "O Nand Maharaj, this child of yours is therefore as good as Narayan in his transcendental qualities, opulence, name, fame, and influence. He is exactly like Narayan. You should all raise this child very carefully and cautiously. The real meaning of Garga's words is hidden. Narayan is similar to Krishna in the qualities that define the status of God, but he does not share the unbound sweetness of Krishna's appearance and attire. His pastimes and so on. Outwardly, Garga encourages nuns to take great care in raising and protecting Krishna, but secretly the word Gopa I Swa has another interpretation. Because of Krishna, there will be a constant increase, Aya, of the cowherd ecstatic love, and also because of him, all their desires and needs, Swa, will be fulfilled.
Okay, so Gargamuni did the
ceremony.
yeah, he did
The name ceremony, yeah.
he did the Jata Sky, he did the yeah, naming ceremony, and also at the same time he did astrological, so he was quite astounded, obviously, you can imagine. But the way he's communicating with Nanda Maharaj is very very intelligently. He's saying he's as good as Narayan. Actually, he's better than Narayan. That's the point that's been stated here. He's better than Narayan. Yeah. So that's why he says it in which is often it's called parokshavad. He says it in an indirect way by using this word here. Ayashwa. Yeah. Actually, he is the origin of Narayan. But Gargamuni doesn't say that. He says he's as good as Narayan. Because that would why doesn't he say that, you think? Or what's one of the reasons he doesn't say that?
Because he doesn't want anybody to know that he's Krishna.
Yeah, because that could
I would know.
Because that could disturb the mood of Vrindavan, you see. Disturb the mood, because as far as they're concerned, he's just a young, beautiful young child. But if Gargamuni makes an explicit statement, this boy is the origin of Narayan. All Narayan come from him. So
protecting Krishna.
Yeah, so therefore he says.
I was just saying that he's a Leela. He was don't want to, keep it quiet. Sorry, Nita Mata.
Otherwise there won't be Vatsalya Bhav. There will be awe and reverence.
Yeah, this is the point we're making. So that's why he says that this child of yours is therefore as good as Narayan. So he's as good as Narayan, but they don't get the hint that he is actually the original Narayan. He's just got qualities like Narayan. So you should treat him very carefully. And then as we know, then when Krishna does start to manifest his pastimes, which often indicate extreme potency in killing the different demons, etc., then they begin to question about Krishna. And then it's mentioned about he is said to be just as good as Narayan. So that's why we're seeing these things. But they don't ever conclude that he is the original Narayan. That's so it's protected. Yeah, so Gargamuni has been very instrumental in the pastimes of Krishna. Yeah, he secretly uses the word Gopashashwa. Yeah. Right. So, You like, there's no other hands up there. You can continue, Mother Kunamai, if you like. Oh, hand's gone up. Go on, you can read this verse, Kunamai.
Nita Mata's got her hand up.
Okay, you can read Mother Nita Mata. Did you hear?
Okay.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
We can only, is that right? We can only pray to satisfy him.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Through our disciplines of silence, peace, and devotion. But being naturally satisfied with you, he has even submitted himself to your control. Comparing the Pandavas with world-renowned sages like himself, Narada finds the Pandavas greater. Narada and other great sages worship the Supreme Lord with serious intent. They are self-satisfied, free from material entanglement, and strict in their execution of the 9 kinds of devotional practice. But by all their proper sadhana, self-controlled sages can only hope to obtain the Lord's mercy in the distant future. Even though Narada is, in fact, a first-class Vaishnava, he humbly includes himself among impersonalist sages who have not yet received the Supreme Lord's mercy. Huh? Oh. The Pandavas, however, have gained Krishna's favor without having undergone spiritual disciplines. So strong and spontaneous is their love for Krishna that he falls under its sway, obeying his devotees' commands like a menial servant, as described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. During one visit to Hastinapur, Narada discussed this at length with Yudhishthira while telling him the history of Prahlad. At the end of this narration, Narada assured Yudhishthira and his brothers that they were no less exalted than Prahlad. My dear Maharaj Yudhishthira, all of you, the Pandavas, are extremely fortunate, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, lives in your palace, just like a human being. Great saintly persons know this very well, and therefore they constantly visit this house. The impersonal Brahman is Krishna himself, because Krishna is the source of the impersonal Brahman. He is the origin of the transcendental bliss sought by great saintly persons, yet he, the Supreme Person, is your most dear friend and constant well-wisher, and is intimately related to you as the son of your maternal uncle. Indeed, he is always like your body and soul. He is worshipable, yet he acts as your servant and sometimes as your spiritual master. Exalted persons like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma could not properly describe the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is always worshipped as the protector of all devotees by great saints who observe vows of silence, meditation, devotional service, and renunciation. May that Supreme Lord be pleased with us. Bhagavatam 7.10.48 to 50. While finishing the account of Prahlada's deliverance by Lord Narasimhadeva, Narada had observed that the Pandavas seemed a little discouraged, as if they had no hope of receiving from the Lord the same mercy as Prahlada. To pacify this anxiety, Narada spoke these 3 verses. The life of the Pandavas could not factually be as hopeless as they considered it. After all, venerated sages from all over the universe came to their home just to visit Krishna. Krishna's living always with the Pandavas shows the Pandavas' great fortune and Krishna's extreme favor upon them. Narada's father Brahma and other great mystics like the 4 Kumaras can only strive to realize Krishna with a dim hope of future success. The unconditional bliss of oneness hinted at in the Vedas is actually embodied in the personality of Krishna, and he associates with the Pandavas in the most intimate ways. He is their most dear friend, always showing them affection. He is their constant well-wisher, acting for their benefit without any calculation of profit. And he is their worshipable Lord and the executor of their orders. He is not a distant goal of perfection, but he is directly present in the Pandava assembly by using the proximate pronoun I am, this person close by. Narada implies that Krishna is ready to reciprocate with the Pandavas at their pleasure. Narada thus indicates that by Krishna's presence in their royal court, the supreme good fortune of the Pandavas overflows and floods the whole world. The skeptic may ask, if Krishna in fact is the absolute truth, then why does he become attached to 16,000 wives, and why does he obey ordinary religious principles? In the third of these 7 canto verses, Narada answers, do not expect to understand everything about Krishna. Even Lord Shiva, Brahma, and other great mystics cannot describe him completely. They cannot even fully describe the beauty of any one of his limbs. They cannot put these transcendental facts into words, nor even conceive them in their minds. And if such exalted authorities are frustrated in trying to explain Krishna, Narada implies, what can someone like me do? The Pandavas, however, have special relationships with Sri Krishna by which they know him much more intimately than do any of the demigods. Krishna is obviously satisfied with the Pandavas, whereas the demigods, by various spiritual practices, must still endeavor to obtain his satisfaction. The absolute truth does not live in the house of Prahlada, and therefore sages do not regularly visit Prahlada's house to see the Lord. The personality of Godhead does not assume the role of Prahlada's maternal uncle, nor constantly show Prahlada his satisfaction in so many ways. Therefore, Narada argues the Pandavas should admit that they are more fortunate than everyone else, the sages, demigods, and other devotees.
Okay, thank you, Mother. We've got about it's 7 o'clock now, so perhaps we're finished there, but very nice. Obviously, the Pandavas, they're hearing about Prahlad and they're thinking that Prahlad is greatly fortunate, but Narada Muni is actually reminding them that actually they are more fortunate. And I was just thinking here, I heard this here, the absolute truth does not live in the house of Prahlad. And there's a verse in that regard which is similar to this, but it describes that one devotee describes, I do not worship the Vedas, I do not worship the Upanishad, I do not worship, I worship the little boy who plays in the courtyard of Mother Yasoda. So here the Pandavas, they're blessed because the Lord lives in their house, but for Mother Yasoda, the Lord is playing around in her courtyard like a young boy, and she's giving him her breast milk. So how more exalted is Mother Yasoda? She actually chases him, we've got the Damodar Leela, so that's probably beyond the understanding of the Pandavas and everyone. All right, we better stop there because I have another meeting at 7, so we'll stop there. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll continue next week with text 15, and it's going to go on for quite some time, glorifying the Pandavas. Yeah. So we've got a few more verses.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Murli Prabhu. He's great. Murli Prabhu ki. Yeah. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Krishna,